Welcome back to Wallbuilders Live. It's Good News Friday. We're talking about things that are happening across the nation, some good things, some victories, whether it's polling data or the result of opinions or it's an actual piece of legislation, and a lot of times court cases, even though we used to think that was impossible to get good news from the courts. But we've talked about so many court victories over the last few years, David. It's totally changed my opinion on that.
And there's good stuff happening on the life issue. We're talking before the break about how the elections did make a difference. Let me just take you to Florida for a minute. You know, in Florida, in one day, their House passed 6 pro-life bills in one day.
No way.
Not one every 6 years, but 6 in one day out of Florida, including the fact that they repassed a bill that had been vetoed by Governor Christ, and that's the ultrasound bill. So this time,
and I'm betting Rick Scott signed it.
He signed it. Yeah, he's saying, you got this one. Bring it on. Put it on my desk. You got a signature. So Florida, the elections made a big difference already in Florida. Kansas, we had Sam Brown back, the governor on.
Yeah.
Remember, he's the guy that 8, 9, 10 years ago, I forget what it was, he introduced this fetal pain act, where that they had medical evidence that the unborn child felt the abortion and tried to run away from the incident. You know, that's what got Abby Johnson.
Exactly right.
And so now a number of states have passed legislation on the fetal pain protection. But Sam's already got 4 pro-life laws passed in his legislature just in one year that he's been there. So, I mean, all over the country, we're seeing laws on life really go in the right direction.
I'd love to see a graph or something. This is probably the most successful year for pro-life legislation in our lifetimes. I mean, it just seems like, we're ticking off all these victories state after state after state.
No, I'd say probably back in 1779. Because that's when Jefferson and all those guys banned abortion. So that was probably...
that was even better. Yeah,
that's
totally.
Even better.
You're right. Okay, since 1972,
I'll take it back. You did say in our lifetime. You did say...
You're right,
You're right.
You're right.
No, I'm back. All right.
Hey,
Jefferson doesn't count.
Well, since you mentioned Florida, I had to be, I was at at the homeschool convention out there and spoke at the graduation, and Rick Scott was there, the governor, and did the whole deal.
You graduated from homeschool finally?
Yeah. I was real impressed with him. I don't know if you've had a chance to visit with him or not, but real down to earth, solid, good positions on every... I didn't know much about him. That's really the first time
he was a good guy.
Looked into it. So really cool.
He was a real change for the governor.
There is a whole crop out there. I mean, when you look at the folks that are taking over as governors and that sort, it's just really phenomenal to me to see the kind of we call them politicians, but these are people willing to take a stand. I mean, he took on a tough budget battle there. Chris Christie and his deal, Scott Walker. All these guys are saying, "Hey, if I don't get reelected, so what? I'm going to do what I can."
And see, that means they're not politicians; they're statesmen, because they're not looking to the next election; they're looking to do what's right.
That's right,
and that makes all the difference, and that will turn the country.
Yeah.
Now the question is, can voters stand that? Because people like Scott Walker and Christie, their negatives are really high right now.
Right.
They're turning their state, they're saving their state, but boy, people are squealing. And so we'll see.
But you remember back in.
But I really think the people will come around and they'll vote for them again.
I do too.
I think they're going to be fine.
81, 82. A year and a half into Reagan's tax cuts, everybody was saying, it's not working. You need to abandon what you're doing. I mean, even Nancy was saying back off. I mean, and yet he stood his ground. And I think if these guys will learn from that and stand their ground, the policy will win out, and it'll prove that it works.
Well, they came to make a difference, and they're going to do that. And if they get sent home for making a difference, they're going to get sent home. But they came to make a difference, and bless their heart, they're doing it.
What a breath of fresh air.
It's good stuff. And by the way, I checked while we were at break, and in Texas, we defunded $60 million from going to any abortion facility in the state. So that's Planned Parenthood, $60 million, which is pretty good size in Texas. We also got the sonogram bill passed here. Governor Perry signed the sonogram bill. We've been working on that one for a while.
In fact, not only signed it, pushed for it, made an emergency legislation earlier in the session. I mean, this is not a governor that sat back and said, well, if they pass it, I guess I have to sign it. He led the way.
He led the way. That's right. He declared early on that this is a priority bill, emergency legislation. Did that in special session as well. And then the Medicaid reform bill also prohibits money from being used for abortions, elective abortions, and Medicaid reform. So Texas already got 3 pro-life bills passed this session. It's been a long time since we've had 1 or 2 passed, but we got 3 this session. So that's really good. But we're kind of reflective of what the rest of the nation is doing.
And it really is important to point out that this is because of the voice of the voters.
That's right.
Because you have a lot of the same people in office.
It was not a mixed voice this last election.
That's right.
It was a very clear voice.
People were you remember 2 years ago when some of these pro-life pieces of legislation died late in the session because they got put off. They weren't priorities for some of the insider controller kind of folks there. And the people were so loud over the last year the folks, the legislature knew we better pass these or we're dead.
Well, I mean, quite frankly, here in Texas, we had an insurrection against our House Speaker because he let that stuff die.
Yeah.
And just to save his hide this time, he's suddenly become a conservative. He's been converted not because his heart's changed, because he's scared to death having to face the people again.
What is it Bob McEwen always tells us? He says every politician is going to do what they think is in their best interest. It's our job to make sure they know that what's in their best interest is what we want.
That's right.
And so now you get the results because they know we've let our voice be heard. For too long, they thought, oh, we can just sound good on the campaign trail and never actually do what it is that we're promising the people that we'll do. But now that people are paying attention, the politicians are scared and they're saying, hey, we need to do what it is the people want.
This is a good example of why intolerance is a virtue, because we become intolerant of that kind of patronizing talk.
Intolerance, not tolerance.
Tolerance is not a virtue. Intolerance is the virtue here.
Yeah.
And we become intolerant of being patronized with these guys saying, oh, we'll do the right thing.
That's right.
And it's just not happening. And it's good that people are intolerant with it and have made their voices heard. I mean, we talked last week about what went on in Rhode Island, Maryland, very blue states, but the people made their voices heard on the marriage issue, and it scared those legislators to death.
It's evidence, further evidence of the fact that the system works. You just got to be engaged. You got to let your voice heard. Sometimes it takes a long time. It's going to take a while to get health care reversed, but the system does work. Elections still do make a difference. Back in a moment on Wallbuilders Live.
This is Texas Governor Rick Perry, and I share your concerns about our nation's direction. In this economy, there are too many jobless, homeless, and hopeless in America. Families are struggling. It's time to seek God's help through prayer and fasting, as God's people have done throughout history. So join me in Houston's Reliant Stadium on August the 6th as we ask God's forgiveness, His wisdom, and provision for our nation. Visit theresponseusa.com and take part of something even bigger than Texas.
Hey friends, Rick Green here to tell you about a great new opportunity to learn about the Constitution and our Founding Fathers. Chief Justice Jay was exactly right, and never before have I seen so many people interested in doing exactly what he said. He said that every member of the state ought diligently to read and to study the Constitution. By knowing their rights, they'll sooner perceive when they're violated and be the better prepared to defend and assert them. Well, we've done a program that now covers the entire Constitution. It's the Citizen Guide to our founding documents. We go through every clause, every article, every amendment. We get into the Founding Fathers. We talk about what they actually intended. All of these things, and it's right there in a class. And you can actually attend one of our live classes around the country by signing up at my website, rickgreen.com. You can also get the entire class on DVD and CD, so it's like you're in the room. Go to my website to find out more, rickgreen.com. Let's do what Chief Justice John Jay suggested that we do. Let's read and study the Constitution, and here's your opportunity to do that. It's called the Citizen Guide to our Founding Documents.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. Just a few minutes left. We're going to see how much we can squeeze in, so try to knock out a few here. David, what you got,
I want to
bro?
talk about a highly popular program you hear every night on the news. Tell me what UCUT is at the U.S. Congress.
UCUT?
UCUT. You don't know what that is?
Sounds like U-Haul, but it's maybe hopefully you cut
You
some
don't know what
government.
UCUT
I don't know. UCUT.
Majority Leader Eric Cantor on the website puts up a bunch of programs that are potentials for being cut out of the government.
Oh, he's wanting people to respect the people to say.
You get to go online and vote for the program you think should be cut.
I love it.
The program that gets the most votes, that's what they'll cut. And so they go in the budget. So every week they put up a bunch of programs, say, what do you want cut? So YOU cut is the name of this thing. And guess what won last week? UCUT. People decided they did not want funding for UNFPA. Do you know what UNFPA is?
PA, no idea.
Start with UN.
Something to do with United Nations?
United Nations.
Okay, and then FPA?
Family Population Assistance.
Ah, so
this
I'm sure
is what
abortion
funds,
funding at
This
the
is
UN.
what funds the forced abortions in China, the one-child policy. The UN funds forced abortions. This is a huge pro-abortion population fund, and the United States has given money to these knotheads to do abortions coercively I mean, it's crazy. But
So
anyway,
we're funding them. So UN's doing that. We're funding them, and I forget how many billions we give the UN every year.
It's crazy.
And so the people voted. So this is the
This
program we
is what
want to cut.
So guess what gets cut?
Excellent.
So I love it, and I love the fact that Congress has this thing up where you guys decide what you want cut.
Yeah, that's a great idea because everybody's always saying we want smaller government. Oh, but don't touch my program. So we say, hey, look, here's a bunch of programs.
You choose the one you won't cut. What's the
cut?
one you won't cut this week?
Yeah.
So we'll defend this in the next bill. What do you want cut? So it's a great deal. I like that one, and it was a pro-life thing. Here's a fun one. The last 3 presidential elections, we've had lawsuits filed over not having prayer at the elections, at the inaugurations.
Oh, so in January when they get inaugurated.
January. And we've been winning those. But the new wrinkle this year was Michael Newdow filed suit saying, hey, don't say in God you trust, in God we trust, excuse me, don't say so help me God when you take the oath. That's not in the Constitution, so don't say so help me God. So lawsuit on it, and the U.S. Supreme Court said, bye, they're not going to hear it. It's been thrown out all the other courts.
Excellent.
And the last word is the Supreme Court has thrown it out as well.
Good.
So that's
Good,
a piece
good,
of good news. That has no footing. That's got no standing. It's not going anywhere. And probably the final one to fit in today is, and this one, you know how the FBI is always arresting all these pro-life people because they claim they're making threats and charges against abortion clinics, and you got the Free Access of Clinic Entrance Act and all these things to keep pro-lifers off. This is just, it's almost surreal. The FBI arrested a pro-abortion advocate for threatening pro-lifers.
Really?
Yeah. Can you believe that? Theodore Solomon on charges of terroristic threats against pro-lifers. 49-year-old self-proclaimed pro-choice terrorist, and he's been calling pro-life groups and threatening them for their position on pro-life, and got arrested by the FBI. So that's a change in the other direction
no doubt.
as well,
I'm surprised they even reported it.
Well, they didn't. You have to dig around
really
and find
dig
these
deep to
kind of
find
news.
this,
Yeah,
yeah.
but these are reports that are out there, and you can get that. And by the way, these are the kind of articles we'll put up on the website so that people can see this news that's out there. Good news that comes every day. And sometimes it's just informative stuff, but sometimes it is good news like this. And it's just a way to keep up with what the news doesn't often tell you. And that's good stuff.
If you want some more of the programs, our archives are also available there at wallbuilderslive.com. Usually go about 10, 11, 12 months
back. Or you can even watch this. Good News Fridays are televised.
That's right. Starting to put our Good News Fridays up. That's a scary thought for them to actually see what we look like, David. They may not listen.
It's hard to look at you, but I don't know, man.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, folks. You've been listening to Wallbuilders Live with David Barton and Rick Green.
Stand undivided.